This tutorial will guide you through the process of wheel removal, wheel installation, tire replacement, and inner tube replacement of your SUPER73 bike. For the examples shown in this video, you will need the following tools: 15mm wrench, 6mm hex wrench, 3mm hex wrench, 2.5mm hex wrench, 21mm combination wrench or adjustable wrench, 2 tire levers, a bike pump or air compressor, replacement inner tube, replacement tire, 3 zip ties, and a cable tie cutter. If the following processes are not within your skill set, we recommend taking the bike to a professional cycle mechanic for proper maintenance. SUPER73 will not be held liable for damages occurring due to improper handling of the bike. The processes detailed in this video require turning the bike upside down. Before proceeding, you will need to adjust the position of the throttle to prevent damage while the bike is upside down. For the Z series, you will need a 2.5mm hex wrench, and for the S series and OG, you will use a 3mm hex wrench. With the bike upright and the kickstand engaged, locate and loosen the hex bolt on your throttle and then rotate the throttle so that the display and throttle are positioned on the underside of the handlebars. To turn the bike upside down, position yourself on the bike, disengage the kickstand, and engage the rear brake. Slowly back up, elevate the bike with the brake engaged, and rotate until it is positioned upside down, with the handlebars and frame rested on the ground. Now that the bike is positioned upside down, let's start by going over how to remove and reinstall the front and rear wheels of your bike. Loosen the nuts on both sides of the wheel with the 15mm wrench and remove the nuts from the axle. Set nuts aside to reinstall later. Carefully guide the wheel out of the dropouts of the lower fork. Lift to remove and set the wheel aside. Remove the flat washers from both sides of the wheel axle and set it aside to reinstall later. Before reinstalling the front wheel, reinstall the flat washers on both sides of the axle. Slide the wheel into place, making sure that the flat washers are on the inside of the dropouts and that the brake rotor is aligned with the brake caliper. Now loosely tighten the nuts onto each side of the axle. With the wheel aligned on the fork, fully tighten the nuts to secure the wheel in place. Locate and cut the zip ties that hold the rear hub wire to the frame and disconnect by gently pulling the male and female connectors away from each other. Loosen and remove the axle nuts using a 21mm combination wrench or an adjustable wrench. Remove the anti-rotation washers from both sides of the axle and keep both of these washers and the nuts for reinstallation. Slide the rear wheel towards the front of the bike and out from the dropouts. We recommend hooking the chain over the rear dropout for easy reinstallation. Set the wheel aside. When reinstalling the rear wheel, make sure that the flat washers are on each side of the axle and then slide the rear wheel into place, making sure the flat washers are located on the inside of the dropouts and the brake rotor is lined up with the brake caliper. Place the chain over the freewheel. Once the chain is in place on both the crank and the freewheel, align the rear wheel and slide into place. Place the anti-rotation washers on each side of the axle, facing towards the front of the bike. Now loosely tighten the nuts onto each side of the axle. Check the chain tension to make sure the wheel is seated properly and tighten the nuts completely. Connect the rear hub cable by lining up the arrows on both the male and female connector and gently push the two together. Secure the wire to the frame with zip ties. Now that we are familiar with how to remove and reinstall the wheels, let's go over some maintenance procedures on the wheel that are performed while it is removed. Once the wheel is removed from the bike, remove the dust cap from the Schrader valve and depress the center of the valve with a hex wrench to deflate the tire. Do not use objects like screwdrivers, keys, or anything with a sharp edge for this step, as it could damage the valve. Apply pressure on the tire while deflating to ensure all air is taken out of the inner tube. Push one bead of the tire towards the rim, working your way around the tire to loosen the bead. Repeat the process on the other side of the tire. Take one of your tire levers and engage it under the bead of the tire. Engage your second tire lever under the bead 1 to 2 inches away from the other tire lever. Pull both tire levers toward the spokes to lift the bead off of the rim. Disengage one lever and move it 2 inches down the tire and pull to lift the next section of the bead off the rim. Repeat this process until the bead loosens. Then slide the tire lever along the rim under the bead. Starting on the end opposite of the Schrader valve, pull the inner tube out of the tire. Once you reach the valve, carefully pull the valve from the valve hole on the rim, fully remove the inner tube and set aside. Separate the second bead from the rim and then fully remove the tire from the rim. Visually inspect the inner tube for any damage, such as tears, rips, or other damage that would cause the tube to leak. A small leak may be hard to identify, but can be checked by inflating the tube and submerging in a bucket of water to look for bubbles coming out of the tube. If any damage is found that is resulting in a leak from the tube or the Schrader valve, dispose of the tube and replace it with a new one. We do not recommend using a patch kit as a permanent solution for damaged inner tubes. Visually inspect the inside and outside of the tire for any damage, such as missing tread, rips, holes, or damage to the bead that prevents the tire from seating properly. Carefully check for any foreign objects that may have embedded into the tire, such as nails, thorns, or broken glass. If any foreign objects are found, carefully remove them with pliers and check the affected area of the tire to see if there is compromisable damage. Damage to the tire can cause the inner tube to be improperly seated and susceptible to damage when in use. If any damage is found, please dispose of the tire and replace it with a new one. With the tire and inner tube still removed from the wheel, visually inspect the rim liner for damage, sharp edges, protruding spokes, and that the liner is evenly set inside the bottom of the rim cavity. If you find any damage to the rim liner, discard and replace it with a new liner. Next, visually inspect the inside of the rim cavity for any sharp edges or damage that could result in damage to the inner tube. If you find there is damage to the rim that compromises its use, please take detailed photos or video and send them via email to customercare@super73.com, and a rider advocate can assist with a proper resolution. Next, inflate the inner tube just enough for it to hold its shape. Place the inner tube inside the tire and make note of any directional arrows on the tire indicating the rotational direction. If there are directional arrows, orient the tire in the appropriate direction and lower the tire and inner tube valve into the rim valve hole, and align the valve so that it is pointing straight toward the wheel hub. Work one tire bead into the rim by hand. Work the tube over the rim sidewall and into the rim cavity, and then work second bead into the rim by hand. Check both sides of the tire for proper seating on the rim and that the inner tube is not sticking out. Remove and reinstall the tire if needed to seat properly. Inflate the inner tube to low pressure and check that the bead on both sides is still properly seated. If the tire is still properly seated, continue to inflate the tire to between 18 and 22 psi and reinstall the dust cover on the Schrader valve. Your wheel is now ready to be placed back onto your bike. Once your wheel is reinstalled on your Super 73 bike, bring your bike back into an upright position by grabbing the handlebars and slowly lifting the bike up. Once upright, engage the kickstand. Now that the bike is upright, it's time to do a final visual inspection of the following before powering your bike. Ensure the wheel is properly aligned and hardware is fully tightened. Check that the tire is still properly seated into the rim. The brake rotor is aligned with the brake caliper, and all wiring connections are securely fastened. If you are having issues with your Super 73 wheels and need support, please contact Super 73 directly by sending an email to customercare@super73.com or calling 814-747-9072, and a rider advocate will be happy to assist you.